Welcome, welcome. I am Dena, and this is Discussions with Dena. There was a media announcement today stating that the feds have charged 4 police officers in the fatal Breonna Taylor raid. Now, for anyone who doesn't know who Breonna Taylor is, she was a 26-year-old young black woman, and she was murdered by police while she was in her apartment on March 13, 2020. She was sleeping. They claimed to be executing a no-knock warrant in Louisville, Kentucky. Her apartment was shot up by these Louisville Metro Police Department officers who were said to be in plain clothes when they entered her apartment. Now, their names are Jonathan Mattingly, Brett Hankinson, and Miles Cosgrove. 3 plainclothes officers entering your apartment when you are getting ready for bed or in your bed. Now, this was announced by the U.S. Justice Department. The civil rights charged today that these 4 police officers will be charged for their involvement in the drug raid that led to her death. It has been 2 years since she was murdered. The charges are supposed to be an effort to hold law enforcement accountable for the killing of this young woman. However, these same officers were acquitted of state charges earlier this year. Again, the charges are against former officers Joshua James, Brett Hankinson, Kelly Gaudet, along with the Sergeant Kyle Meany. Now, Hankinson was dismissed from the department in 2020, and he was one of the officers that was at Taylor's door and one of the 3 who fired the shots that night that killed her. He was acquitted by a jury of state charges of wanton endangerment earlier this year. Now, James had applied for the warrant to search Taylor's house. He was fired in January 2021 by a former police chief. I think her name was Yvette Gentry, and he was fired for violating department standards in the preparation of the search warrant and execution for being untruthful. Now, what exactly does that mean? It remains to be seen as far as the punishment for these charges. But I know that her mother, her relatives, and friends are tired of waiting for real justice at this point, because one thing we do know about the legal system is that it's very unjust when it comes to receiving actual justice from members of law enforcement, especially when it involves us. Now, Yahoo News reports that Ben Crump, who is her attorney, he is a civil rights attorney, and remember, he settled the case for $12 million. But he said it was a great day after this announcement, and he represented the family. Now, one of the detectives who actually lied on the search warrant is among those that was charged. As I said, his name is Hankinson. He was dismissed in 2020, but he fired the shots that night. Now, he faces 2 civil rights charges alleging that he used unconstitutional excessive force during the raid on Miss Taylor's home. The Assistant Attorney General, Christian Clark, for the Civil Rights Division, along with the United States Department of Justice Attorney Garland, both on Thursday were speaking, and they said that Hankinson alleged that he used a dangerous weapon and that his conduct involved an attempt to kill. According to them, earlier this year, a jury did find Hankinson not guilty on state charges that were related to this shooting. He was the only officer charged in the case on the state level. Now, James applied for the warrant to search Taylor's house. He was fired on January 2021 for inserting what one of the police chiefs at that time by the name of Yvette Gentry found to be an untruthful statement. in his sworn affidavit, which is required in order to get a search warrant. In this affidavit, he swore before a judge that he verified through a postal inspector that Taylor's ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, who they considered to be a drug trafficking suspect, was having packages delivered to her apartment. But James had actually spoken to another officer by the name of Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who had gotten information from a Shively police, not the postal inspector as he stated. And according to that officer, Shively, postal inspectors said there were no packages there. So Meany and James are facing federal civil rights and obstruction offenses that are related to preparing and approving the false search warrant. Now, Goodlett was charged with one count of conspiring with James to falsify the search warrant in order to get into Breonna Taylor's home, and they were covering up their actions, and this is according to the Department of Justice. Now, Louisville Police Chief Erica Shields started termination proceedings Thursday against Meany and Goodlett following the announcement by these people having federal charges. Now, the Department of Justice also alleged that there was a police cover-up in Breonna Taylor's case. I agree. So the department responded with a statement that said it is critical that any illegal or inappropriate actions by law enforcement be addressed comprehensively in order to continue their efforts to build police community trust. Now, the United States Attorney Garland said the federal charges focus on the conduct of Louisville Police Department's place-based investigation unit, which Taylor's family lawyers labeled in this lawsuit back in 2020 that it was a rogue group that purposely targeted people and drugs in the Louisville West End area. Now, DOJ Garland said members of this unit falsified the affidavit used to obtain the search warrants into Ms. Taylor's home, which violated federal civil rights law and resulted in Breonna Taylor's death. James, Meany, and Goodlett sought the warrant for Taylor's home, knowing that the officers lacked probable cause for the search. This is what Garland said. And they knew the affidavit in support of the warrant contained false and misleading information and that it omitted material information purposely. Garland, he also alleges that James and Goodlett met in a garage in May 2020 and they conspired to knowingly falsify an investigative document and conspired to mislead federal, state, and local authorities who were investigating this shooting that led to her death. So the FBI is said to be investigating Breonna Taylor's death, and they're believed to have been investigating since May of 2020 when it opened its color of law case that focuses on allegations of police officers or other officials that are improperly using their authority, including excessive force, false arrest, or obstruction of justice. Now, last year, the Justice Department also opened a patterns and practices investigation into the Louisville Metro Police Department and into the Louisville Metro government. And it's supposed to focus on several areas, including whether the department used reasonable force, including during peaceful protests, which I would love to know. They were very aggressive against those protesters. I'm watching on TV and I can see how aggressive they were. So this department definitely needs to be held accountable for what they did to many of those protesters who were in their right to protest the events. Now, they will also be investigating to see if the department engaged in unconstitutional stops, searches, and seizures, including unlawful search warrant executions on private residences, to see if they discriminated against people based on race. as if that's a question, and failed to provide public services in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, we will just have to once again wait and see how this pans out. The Justice Department probe proves what many of us already know to be true. We'll see if it proves it. We already know what is true about this and many other police department policies and practices in this country when it comes to us. And I do mean Black people. And furthermore, I, as well as many others, are still in limbo as to even the effectiveness of these probes, including their system of accountability or its misconduct investigations. Now, I want to thank you for listening, and I want to invite you to let me know your thoughts on this issue. Like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments. I will see you next time for a discussion with Dena.